Hello and welcome to the Idaho Reports podcast. I'm Logan Finney. Multiple states around the country are looking at the use of electronic IDs or mobile driver's licenses in addition or replacement to the physical ID cards that we're all used to carrying in our wallets. Here in Idaho, a lawmaker who is looking at an Idaho way to implement this is Representative Stephanie Mickelson from Eastern Idaho. Representative Mickelson, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me today.
So talk to me about, this is House Bill 78. This bill was introduced and is given a bill number. Talk to me about this bill and the background of how long you've been working on it.
Well, for a little background, I have 4 millennial children or Gen Xers, and they're like, Mom, you have got to figure this out because, as you know, this generation wants less paper, less things to have to carry around, that kind of thing. So I started looking at it, and that was during my very first session, my first year. Realized that I needed to really look at it, study it a bunch before I brought it back. And I tried to bring it last year, and because of some specific situations, I was unable to do that. So then I brought it back again this year. I actually got it RS'd, and now it gets a bill number. One of the concerns that was in the bill, one of the concerns of the people that voted against it in committee was there was a line about it will serve as an identification for a person. So their concern, which was in my original bill of 2 years ago, was that it would not an electronic driver's license would not qualify for voting. So after yesterday's hearing, I have gone back to the drafting department, and I thought we were going to run a separate bill, but then after they looked at it and talked between the bill drafters and the chairman and some things, we're going to put the election part back into the driver's license bill so that people will be required to have a paper hard copy of their identification for voting purposes.
Yeah, I think that was listening to the hearing where the committee voted to introduce the bill. You seem to emphasize multiple times that here in Idaho, at least, this would be an electronic option in addition to the cards we already carry. We wouldn't be getting rid of anything.
So one of the things that multiple other states learned is if you simply say, okay, a person can either have a hard copy or they can have an electronic copy, that people had a hard time wanting to have that be to adopt that. But if they come in first and people kind of get to see how those electronic or mobile driver's licenses work over time, then it gets to be more acceptable. And then you'll see that certain people will say, I don't even want a paper copy. And maybe it will become an acceptable form for the elections, people that are working elections. But at this point, it's a convenience factor. Sometimes you go somewhere and they say, I need to see your ID. If you're going to say rent out something and they want to see your ID. I had an instance where I went to a conference and I didn't realize that I had to actually show my ID. It was 20 minutes away by car. And luckily I had a picture of my photo ID with me on me and they accepted that. But in cases like of young girls or that are old enough to drink, obviously, but if they went to a bar or something, with the mobile driver's license, they can limit what they can see. They can see that they're old enough to drink and that they're a legal resident of Idaho without disclosing their phone number, their address, their birth date, right? And in some ways, that's how we have identity theft occur. So if you can prevent that from happening in several steps along the way, that makes those IDs more secure than a paper copy that could get stolen and people create identity theft from that.
Sure. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of places that we show our IDs. It's not just voting. It's also the liquor stores, certain age checks for things like cigarettes and other situations. You used to have to show it at the pharmacy, not anymore. But it's also, I think, a bit of a generational divide, like you referenced with your children. I know I'm in my 20s, my late 20s now. I'm not as young as I used to be. But there seems like it's a frequent complaint among people my age that they'll have a photo of their ID card on their phone somewhere, and then it's just lost in the millions of photos that they have saved. And it's then also not a very convenient way to do it. And obviously a photo is not all that secure anyway.
Well, one of the things originally when we started looking at the bill a couple of years ago is they were looking at just like adapting to an Apple Wallet or a Google Wallet or whatever the case was.
Which is what some other states have done.
And some other states have done that, but some other states have built it out. And what they found was that the states that had created their own app and their own platform, if you will, had much safer situations, as well as they could control. Because when you agree to go to like an Apple or a Google platform, there's certain things that you give up in using their platform. And so I'm really glad in a lot of ways that we waited a year, that they went to more conferences and saw how this worked before we did ours, because we're back to now where we think we want to create a wallet that's specific to Idaho, not specific to certain tech companies.
Sure, and this is something that the state fish and game department has done. They have a mobile app where you can pull up your hunting licenses, fishing licenses.
Well, and they've also talked about too, over time, these other states, that we will be able to add like our insurance, to our Idaho wallets, that we'll be able to, show we have our insurance, we have our driver's license, we have, our parks passport or whatever that might be. And then it's located in one place and we're not always looking for other places. One of the things they have said about the mobile driver's license is you will only be allowed to put it on one phone. So you can't put it on 2 or 3 devices. So somebody couldn't try to, borrow, if you had a sister or somebody or a twin that looked just like you, that they could all just be using the same ID. It's only going to be allowed to be on one device, is my understanding.
Sure, and having it be something proprietary that the state has developed helps with that security of personally identifying information, as well as those security measures, I imagine.
Right. And hopefully over time, one of the driving forces too is that over time, they think the technology is going to evolve to the point that when an officer pulls somebody over, they'll be able to, because of the phone and things, send it to the officer without the officer first getting out of his car. So it creates a safety situation. So if an officer by chance had somebody that had an outstanding warrant, or might be running drugs and might have guns in the car or something like that, that we're not putting officers, especially when they're on patrol by themselves, that it could be a safer situation for them to be in with the mobile driver's licenses.
Sure, and I know that I've also seen some civil rights organizations are sometimes concerned about the concept of mobile driver's licenses because they're concerned about search and seizure and police having to have a warrant to search you. Their concern is, well, if you have to unlock your phone and hand it over to a police officer for them to scan your driver's license, does that give the law enforcement license to search through everything on your phone? Your bill addresses this, though, correct?
Yes, correct. So part of my bill, and I think people need to understand how the technology works. First off, I would hold out my phone and the officer would hold out theirs. I create a QR code so the officer never gets to touch my phone. That QR code will then upload all the data to the officer's phone, or they can come, face to face with each other. But in any case, the user would never let their phone out of their possession. And so it does not give law enforcement an open checkbook, if you will, to just take somebody's phone and see if they have child porn on it or any of these kind of things. And I think we need to remember that this is going to be an opt-in program. If you want it, you may have to pay up to $10 a year to be able to have this function. But for those of us that like to carry less things around with us, I think that $10 is going to look like a good deal, But we have specifically addressed that they cannot have your phone. They cannot have access to anything else on your phone. We want to make sure people's rights are protected, and that's why right now still too you're going to have your paper copy for a little while until people get a lot more comfortable with how this technology works. Because my mom, for example, may not be very techie smart to be able to pull up her mobile driver's license if she got pulled over. So she might be better off to just make sure she always has her card.
We referenced already that there was a little bit of hesitation among the committee in introducing the bill. You mentioned because of the voting identification piece. I imagine also probably the Idaho legislature is fairly conservative, and something digital like this is a big possible shift for the state to make. What sort of conversations have you had with the members of the Transportation Committee about the future of the bill?
So this was the thing, is when I went up and talked to the no votes, almost every one of those had to do with this election issue, with being able to provide that for your identification. And as soon as I assured them that if that was the concern, that I was going to go get that addressed. And like I say, I have it in the drafting department now. We're going to get that addressed because I don't want I don't want my mobile driver's license bill to be caught up in an election security issue. So whatever I got to do to make those people feel comfortable about where we're going. And like I say, it's an opt-in program. So if you say, I don't feel comfortable having my information out there somewhere, which everybody needs to understand their information's out there somewhere anyways, but specifically, then if they don't want to opt in, they have their information will not be, they have like this bank thing, if you can think of it as a bank that's a trusted source. And so in order for a state to have access to this, they have to have special keys. And then for any law enforcement officer to access that information, they have to be verified with trusted keys, if you will. And so that's how come I feel a good sense of security with it. They've been doing it in Europe. They've been doing it, like I say, it's been implemented in probably half the states, and up to 3/4 of the states are in the process of developing these mobile driver's licenses.
Well, we'll be sure to keep an eye on the bill as it moves forward through committee and possibly into the floor. Representative Stephanie Mickelson, thanks for your time this week.
Thanks, Logan. Appreciate being here.
Support for Idaho Public Television comes from the School of Public Service at Boise State University, providing objective and impactful research for Idaho and beyond, and academic programs with hands-on learning that equip students to be effective public service leaders.
Presentation of Idaho Reports on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.